Welcome to Dream Tales Sleep Stories. Tonight's reading is The Missing Violin. Settle into your bed or sofa and let your shoulders, jaw, and eyelids grow heavy. Inhale slowly, 1, 2, 3, and sigh the air away, allowing the day to fade into quiet dark. With every soft inhale, you invite fresh English phrases. With every gentle exhale, stray thoughts drift farther off. Behind my voice flows a gentle melody, renowned for guiding the mind toward deep relaxation. Keep your eyes closed or follow the captions, whichever feels right. Simply receive the rhythm and resonance of the language. Deep in rest, tonight's phrases will take root like seeds, ready to bloom into stronger English skills with the morning light. When you feel settled, hold that unhurried breath and allow yourself to drift into the tale. The Missing Violin begins now. And when the story's final line has faded, the music will linger a little longer, carrying you gently deeper into sleep. The Missing Violin. The Hartfield Symphony Orchestra had been preparing for their most important concert of the year. For 6 months, every musician had practiced for hours each day, perfecting every note of the program. They were going to perform Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, one of the most challenging and beautiful pieces of music ever written. The concert was only 3 days away, and the excitement in the rehearsal hall was growing stronger with each passing hour. Elena Novak, the orchestra's lead violinist, arrived at the concert hall early on Monday morning, as she always did. She liked to have the stage to herself for 30 minutes before the other musicians arrived. It was her private time to warm up and focus her mind. She had been the lead violinist for 12 years, and this morning routine had become as natural to her as breathing. She walked through the quiet corridors of the building, her footsteps echoing on the polished wooden floor. The morning light came through the tall windows and created long golden rectangles on the walls. Elena loved the concert hall at this time of day, when it was still and peaceful, before it filled with the sounds of 40 musicians tuning their instruments and chatting about their weekends. She passed the photographs that lined the corridor walls. There were pictures of famous conductors and musicians who had performed in this hall over the past 100 years. Elena's own photograph was among them, taken during a concert 5 years ago. In the picture, she was standing at the front of the orchestra, her eyes closed, her bow moving across the strings of her violin with intense concentration. She reached the small room backstage where the musicians kept their instruments. Each person had their own locked cupboard, numbered from 1 to 45. Elena took out her key and opened cupboard number 7. She reached inside for her violin case, but her fingers touched nothing. The shelf was empty. Elena felt her heart stop for a moment. She checked again, pushing her hand further into the dark space. Nothing. She dropped to her knees and looked underneath the shelf, thinking perhaps the case had fallen. But there was nothing there either. She stood up and looked at the cupboard with wide eyes. Her violin was gone. This was not just any violin. It was a rare instrument made by Giovanni Marchetti, a famous Italian craftsman, over 200 years ago. Only 12 Marchetti violins were known to exist in the world, and this was considered one of the finest. The orchestra had bought it at an auction 15 years earlier for an enormous amount of money. Since then, its value had more than doubled. But to Elena, the violin was worth far more than any amount of money. It had become part of her identity, an extension of her own body. She had played it in hundreds of concerts across Europe and America, and she knew every mark, every scratch, every small imperfection on its beautiful, golden brown surface. Elena's hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone and called Marcus Webb, the orchestra's manager. He had answered on the second ring, and she had told him what had happened. Her voice had been trembling, and she had struggled to find the right words. Marcus had told her to stay calm and had said he would come immediately. While she waited for Marcus, Elena sat on a chair in the instrument room and tried to think. She had definitely put the violin back in the cupboard after Friday evening's rehearsal. She remembered placing the case carefully on the shelf, closing the door, turning the key, and checking the lock twice, as she always did. It was a habit she had developed years ago, because she knew how valuable and irreplaceable the instrument was. Had someone been watching her? Had someone copied her key? 100 questions filled her mind, but she had no answers for any of them. 20 minutes later, Marcus arrived at the concert hall with a serious expression on his face. He was a tall, thin man in his 50s with gray hair and round glasses. He had managed the orchestra for 20 years and had dealt with many problems during that time, from arguments between musicians to broken heating systems during winter concerts. But he had never had to deal with anything like this before. "Are you absolutely certain you left it here on Friday evening?" he asked Elena, examining the empty cupboard carefully. "Completely certain," Elena replied. Her voice was steady now, but Marcus could see that her eyes were red. "I always lock my cupboard after the last rehearsal of the week. I check the lock twice, as I always do." Marcus tried the lock himself. It opened and closed smoothly with Elena's key. There were no signs of damage to the lock or the door. Whoever had taken the violin had either used a key or had been very skilled at opening locks without one. "We need to call the police," Marcus said gravely. "And we need to tell the rest of the orchestra. The morning rehearsal starts in an hour." By 10 o'clock, the rehearsal hall was full of worried musicians. They sat in their usual seats, but instead of holding their instruments, they were holding cups of coffee and talking in low, anxious voices. Everyone had heard the news, and the atmosphere in the room was heavy with shock and disbelief. Detective Sarah Chen arrived shortly afterwards. She was a small woman with sharp dark eyes and short black hair. She wore a plain gray suit and carried a leather notebook. She had been working in the city's art and cultural crime department for 8 years and had dealt with several cases involving stolen musical instruments and valuable artworks. She knew that cases like these required both careful detective work and an understanding of the world of professional music. Detective Chen spent the morning speaking to each musician individually in a private room behind the stage. She asked them all the same questions. When had they last seen the violin? Had they noticed anything unusual in the concert hall recently? Had anyone mentioned the violin's value? Did they know of anyone who might have a reason to take it? Most of the musicians had been shocked and genuinely upset by the news. Many of them had tears in their eyes as they spoke about what the violin meant to the orchestra. It was the pride of their group, and Elena's playing on that particular instrument was what made their performances truly special. Without her and that violin, the upcoming concert would not be the same. The flute player, an elderly woman named Ruth, had told the detective that she could not imagine anyone in the orchestra doing such a terrible thing. "We are like a family," she had said. "We may have our disagreements, but we would never betray each other like this." The drummer, a young man named Leo, had been so upset that he could barely speak during his interview. He had told the detective that the violin was the soul of the orchestra, and that whoever had taken it had taken their heart. However, Detective Chen had noticed that 3 people in the orchestra had behaved differently from the others during their interviews. They had not necessarily seemed guilty, but something about each of them had caught her professional attention. The first was David Park, the second violinist. David was 30 years old and had been with the orchestra for 5 years. He was extremely talented and ambitious, and everyone in the orchestra knew that he had been hoping for years to take Elena's position as lead violinist. During his interview, he had seemed unusually nervous. He had kept looking at the floor and crossing and uncrossing his legs. He had answered questions in short, quick sentences, as if he wanted the interview to end as soon as possible. When asked where he had been over the weekend, he had said he had been at home alone, practicing. He had no witnesses to confirm this. The second was Maria Santos, the cellist. Maria was 42 years old and one of the most experienced members of the orchestra. She was an excellent musician, but Detective Chen had learned from speaking with other members that Maria had been having serious financial difficulties recently. Several musicians had mentioned quietly that Maria had been borrowing money from colleagues for the past few months, and that she had seemed increasingly stressed and unhappy. During her interview, Maria had told Detective Chen that she had spent the weekend visiting her sister in another city, but she had seemed uncomfortable when the detective had asked for specific details about the visit, and she had changed the subject quickly. The third person who had caught the detective's attention was Thomas Engel, the orchestra's instrument technician. Thomas was 55 years old and had been working with the orchestra for nearly 30 years. He was responsible for maintaining, tuning, and repairing all the instruments used by the musicians. Because of his role, he had access to every cupboard in the storage room. He kept a master key that could open any of the 45 locks. During his interview, Thomas had been calm, cooperative, and friendly, almost too calm for someone who worked so closely with the missing instrument. He had explained that he had been at a professional conference for instrument makers and technicians in another city all weekend, and had arrived back in the city only that Monday morning. Detective Chen decided to investigate all 3 suspects more carefully. She asked her team of officers to check their stories, examine their backgrounds, and look for any evidence that might connect them to the theft. Meanwhile, Marcus had called an emergency meeting of the whole orchestra. He stood at the front of the stage and addressed the musicians, who were sitting in their usual concert seats with anxious faces. "As you all know, our lead violin has been stolen from the instrument room," he began, his voice echoing in the large empty hall. "The police are investigating, and I have every confidence that they will find the person responsible. In the meantime, however, we must decide what to do about Thursday's concert." The room immediately filled with anxious voices. Some musicians said they should cancel the concert entirely. They argued that performing without Elena's violin would be disrespectful to the audience, who had paid good money to hear the best possible performance. Others disagreed strongly and argued that they had worked too hard for 6 months to cancel now. The concert hall would be full, the newspapers had written about the event, and canceling would damage the orchestra's reputation. A few musicians suggested that David Park should play the lead violin part using his own instrument, which was a very good modern violin. Elena stood up from her seat in the front row. The room fell instantly silent. Everyone turned to look at her. They could see the determination in her dark eyes. "We cannot cancel," she said firmly. "The audience has been looking forward to this concert for months. Many people bought their tickets the day they went on sale. We owe it to them, and we owe it to ourselves. We will perform on Thursday evening, and I will play the lead part. I just need to find my violin before then." Several musicians exchanged doubtful looks. Finding a stolen violin in 3 days seemed almost impossible. But no one said this out loud, because they could see from Elena's expression that she was completely serious. That afternoon, Detective Chen received the first results of her investigation. Her team had discovered that David Park had not been at home all weekend, as he had claimed during his interview. His neighbors in the apartment building had reported that his lights had been off, and there had been no sound from his apartment from Friday evening until Monday morning. His car had not been in the parking area either. When confronted with this information, David had become very embarrassed and had admitted that he had lied. He had actually spent the weekend at a music competition in a city 2 hours away. He had been competing for a position with the National Symphony Orchestra, one of the most famous orchestras in the country. He had not wanted to tell anyone at the Hartfield Symphony because he had been afraid of what they would think. He was not planning to steal Elena's position. He was planning to leave the orchestra entirely for a better opportunity somewhere else. David's explanation was embarrassing for him, but it was also easy to check. Detective Chen's team confirmed that David had indeed registered for the competition. His name was on the official list. He had performed on Saturday morning, and several judges and other competitors remembered seeing him there. David could not have been in the concert hall stealing the violin. He was no longer a suspect. On Tuesday morning, Detective Chen turned her attention to Maria Santos. She had spent the previous evening checking Maria's story about visiting her sister, and she had found something very interesting. Maria's sister lived 4 hours away in a coastal town, but Maria's bank records, which the detective had obtained with a court order, showed that Maria had not bought a train or bus ticket that weekend. Instead, she had made several small purchases at shops in the city center on Saturday afternoon. When Detective Chen questioned Maria again, the cellist had broken down in tears almost immediately. She had admitted that she had lied about visiting her sister. The truth was that she had spent the weekend trying to sell some of her personal belongings, jewelry that her grandmother had given her, an expensive watch she had received as a gift, some designer clothes she no longer wore, and second-hand shops and jewelry dealers in the city. She needed the money urgently because she was 3 months behind on her rent payments, and her landlord had threatened to start legal proceedings against her. "I would never steal from the orchestra," Maria had said through her tears. "Never. This orchestra is my family. It is the only good thing in my life right now. I could never do something that would hurt my colleagues or damage this place that I love." Detective Chen believed her sincerity, but she still needed evidence. She asked Maria to provide the names and addresses of every shop she had visited that weekend. Maria gave the information without any hesitation, and the detectives' team spent the rest of Tuesday morning visiting each shop. Every shopkeeper confirmed that Maria had been there on Saturday, and several of them remembered exactly what she had tried to sell. Maria was also eliminated from the list of suspects. That left Thomas Engel, the instrument technician. Detective Chen had asked her team to check Thomas's story about attending a conference for instrument makers. They had confirmed that the conference had taken place in a city about 3 hours away, and that Thomas's name was on the attendance list. But they had also discovered something important that Thomas had not mentioned during his interview. The conference had officially ended on Saturday at noon. Thomas had told the police that he had stayed at the conference hotel until Sunday evening. But the hotel records showed that he had checked out on Saturday afternoon, only a few hours after the conference had ended. What had he been doing for the extra day and a half before he returned to the city on Monday morning? On Wednesday morning, with only 1 day remaining before the concert, Detective Chen visited Thomas at his workshop in the basement of the concert hall. The workshop was a fascinating room, filled with specialized tools, pieces of different kinds of wood, coils of strings in various thicknesses, bottles of varnish and polish, and several instruments in various stages of repair. The air smelled of wood shavings and the rich, sweet scent of violin varnish. Soft classical music was playing from a small radio on the workbench. "Thomas, I need to ask you some more questions," Detective Chen said, looking around the room with her sharp, observant eyes. Thomas put down the small wooden piece he had been carefully shaping with a knife and gave the detective a pleasant smile. He was a quiet man with kind eyes, a bald head, and large, gentle hands that seemed too big for the delicate work he did. "Of course, Detective, I want to help in any way I can." The conference ended on Saturday at noon. You checked out of the hotel on Saturday afternoon, but you told us you were at the conference until Sunday evening. Can you explain the difference? For the first time since the investigation had begun, Thomas's calm expression changed slightly. A shadow of worry crossed his face. He paused for several seconds before answering. "After the conference, I stayed in the area to visit some small instrument shops and suppliers. I was looking for special materials, particular types of wood and varnish that are difficult to find." "Can anyone confirm that? Do you have receipts?" "I paid with cash at most of the shops. I prefer cash for small purchases. I am not sure the shopkeepers would remember me." Detective Chen noticed something on the workbench behind Thomas. It was a small, thin metal tool with a curved end that looked remarkably like a lockpick. She pointed at it. "What is that tool used for?" Thomas glanced at the tool and replied without hesitation. "It is a specialized tool for adjusting the fine-tuning mechanisms inside stringed instruments. It allows me to reach inside the body of a violin or cello and make very precise adjustments. I use it regularly." The detective asked to examine the tool more closely. When she picked it up and turned it over in her hands, she noticed that the tip had fresh scratch marks on it, as if it had recently been used on something harder and rougher than the delicate interior of a musical instrument. "May I keep this as evidence?" she asked. Thomas hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. "If you think it is necessary." That evening, Elena received a phone call from Detective Chen. The detective told her that she had obtained a court order to search Thomas's apartment and car. Elena had asked if she could come along as an observer, and the detective had agreed, provided she did not touch anything without permission. They drove to Thomas's small apartment in a quiet neighborhood on the eastern edge of the city. The apartment was on the ground floor of an old brick building with a small garden. Thomas was not at home. A neighbor told them that he had gone out for a walk, as he did every evening. The apartment was neat and extremely tidy, filled with books about music, instrument making, and the history of classical instruments. There were framed photographs on the walls showing Thomas with various famous musicians whose instruments he had repaired over the years. The living room contained a beautiful old piano and several instruments on stands. They searched every room methodically for nearly an hour, but found nothing directly connected to the missing violin. Detective Chen was beginning to think they might need to look elsewhere when Elena noticed something. In the corner of Thomas's small bedroom, there was an old wooden wardrobe with carved flowers on the doors. Elena had asked the detective for permission to open it. Inside the wardrobe, behind a row of neatly hung suits and jackets, she saw the edge of something that made her breath catch in her throat. It was the corner of a black case, partially hidden behind the clothes. She knew this case better than she knew her own face. It was her violin case, with the small silver initials EN engraved on the handle, a gift from the orchestra on her 10th anniversary. "Detective," Elena whispered, "it is here." With trembling hands and the detective's permission, she opened the case. Inside, resting on the red velvet lining, was her Marchetti violin. She picked it up carefully, holding it as gently as she would hold a newborn baby, and examined every inch of its surface. It was undamaged. The beautiful golden brown varnish was as perfect as ever. The strings were properly tuned. The bridge was straight. Every part of the instrument was exactly as it should be. But there was something else in the case that had not been there before. Underneath the velvet cushion where the violin rested, Elena found a small white envelope. Inside the envelope was a letter, 3 pages long, handwritten in Thomas's careful, precise handwriting. The letter explained everything. Thomas had not stolen the violin to sell it or keep it for himself. He had taken it because, during a routine check 2 weeks earlier, he had discovered a tiny crack forming deep inside the body of the instrument. The crack was invisible from the outside, hidden beneath layers of 200-year-old varnish. But Thomas's experienced ear had detected a very slight change in the violin's tone during a recent rehearsal. He had used a tiny camera on a flexible wire to look inside the instrument and had found the crack. It was small, but it was in a dangerous position. If left untreated, it could grow larger and eventually cause the front panel of the violin to separate from the sides. This would have destroyed the instrument completely. Thomas had been horrified by what he had found. He had known that the correct procedure was to tell Elena and Marcus about the crack and send the violin to a specialist restorer. But the nearest qualified Marchetti specialist was in Italy, and the repair would have taken weeks, possibly months. The concert was only days away. Thomas had also been worried that the news about the crack would upset Elena so badly that she would not be able to perform well, even if another instrument was found for her. So, Thomas had made a difficult decision. He had decided to repair the crack himself. His father had been a master instrument maker in Germany, and Thomas had spent his childhood learning the ancient techniques of violin repair. He had skills that very few people in the world possessed. He had believed he could fix the crack secretly over the weekend and return the violin before anyone noticed it was missing. He had left the conference on Saturday afternoon and driven back to his apartment, where he had all the tools and materials he needed. He had worked through Saturday night and all day Sunday, carefully opening the violin, cleaning the crack, applying special glue made from animal skin, and pressing the wood back together. He had then sealed the repair with varnish that he had mixed himself to match the original 200-year-old coating exactly. But the repair had been more complex and delicate than he had expected. The old wood was fragile, and each step had taken twice as long as he had planned. He had not finished the work until early Monday morning. By the time he had arrived at the concert hall, the police had already been called, and Thomas had been too afraid and ashamed to admit what he had done. He had been planning to return the violin secretly, but the police investigation had made that impossible. I am deeply sorry for the worry and trouble I have caused to Elena, to Marcus, to my colleagues, and to the police, the letter concluded. I acted out of love for this extraordinary instrument and out of deep respect for Elena's remarkable talent. I know now that I should have been honest from the very beginning. I hope that someday you can forgive me. Detective Chen found Thomas sitting on a bench in a small park near his apartment. He had not run away. He had not tried to hide. He had been sitting there, waiting, because somehow he had known that this evening would be the evening when the truth would finally come out. He had confessed immediately and completely when he saw Elena and the detective approaching. When the news spread through the orchestra the next morning, the musicians' reactions were deeply divided. Some were furious with Thomas for causing 3 days of terrible anxiety and suspicion. They said that he had no right to take the instrument without permission, regardless of his intentions. Others understood that Thomas had been trying to help, even though his methods had been completely wrong. The flute player, Ruth, had said quietly that Thomas was the most honest and dedicated person she had ever known, and that this whole situation had simply been a good man making a bad decision. Marcus told Thomas that he would face a formal disciplinary hearing for taking the instrument without authorization. But he also said that Thomas's 30 years of loyal and excellent service to the orchestra would be taken into account, and that his position was not in danger. Elena was the last person to speak to Thomas before the concert. She found him in his workshop, sitting alone in the dim light, looking worried and deeply ashamed. "I had the violin examined by an independent expert this morning," she told him gently. "Professor Williams from the Royal Academy. He is one of the leading authorities on historical stringed instruments in Europe." Thomas looked up with anxious eyes. "And what did he say?" "He said your repair work was extraordinary. He said it was as good as anything he had ever seen from the top specialists in Italy. He said the crack could have destroyed the violin within a few months if it had not been treated. You saved it, Thomas." Thomas's eyes filled with tears. He tried to speak, but could not find the words. "You may have gone about it in completely the wrong way," Elena continued. "You caused me 3 of the worst days of my life, but you saved my violin, and for that I am truly grateful. Thank you." That evening, the Hartfield Symphony Orchestra performed Beethoven's Ninth Symphony to a completely sold-out concert hall. Every seat was taken. The audience included critics from the most important newspapers and music magazines in the country, as well as music lovers who had been waiting months for this event. Elena played with more emotion and passion than she had shown in years. The experience of losing her violin and then finding it again had reminded her how precious her gift was and how much music meant to her. Every note she played that evening carried the weight of what she had been through, and the audience could feel it. The music filled the enormous hall, rising up to the painted ceiling and wrapping itself around every person in every seat. When the final note faded into silence, there was a moment of complete stillness. Then the audience rose to their feet as one and began to applaud. The ovation lasted for nearly 12 minutes. Several people in the audience were crying. The music critics would later write that it had been the finest performance the Hartfield Symphony had ever given. After the concert, when the audience had finally left and the other musicians had gone home, Elena stood alone on the empty stage. The lights had been dimmed, and only a single spotlight illuminated the place where she was standing. She held her violin in her arms and ran her fingers over the smooth, warm wood, feeling the invisible place where Thomas had made his secret repair. The instrument felt strong and whole, better than it had felt in months. She had spent 3 terrible days fearing the worst, suspecting her own colleagues, and imagining that she might never play this violin again. And it had all turned out to be an act of devoted care from the person who knew and loved the instrument almost as much as she did. She placed the violin gently back in its case, closed the lid, and fastened the silver clips. Outside the concert hall, she could hear the distant sounds of the city, traffic and voices, and the wind in the trees. Inside, there was only silence, the special deep silence that exists in a concert hall after the music has ended, when the echoes of the last notes are still hanging in the air like invisible ghosts. Elena picked up her case and walked slowly toward the door. Tomorrow there would be another rehearsal, another performance to prepare for, another day of music. But tonight, she was simply grateful. Grateful for her violin, grateful for her colleagues, and grateful for the quiet, humble man in the basement workshop who had risked everything to protect the instrument that was at the heart of their orchestra.